hard part is that the choices sometimes seem infinite nowadays in B2B, but that's also the beauty of it, and finding out where your prospect is. And sometimes it can be like a huge niche surrounding on Reddit, for example. It's super nice to figure that out with your client as well, and learning about your prospect along the way.
Welcome to the Redefine Growth podcast. Today, we got a very special guest. It's one of our own team members, Wesley. He's an expert in B2B marketing and growth, especially when it comes to outbound campaigns. I'm really looking forward to this episode. So are you in B2B? Are you doing any outbound campaigns? This is an episode that you want to watch. Wesley, welcome to the show. Maybe a short introduction. What do you like to do?
Yes, Bart, good morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah, my name is Wesley van Duin. I'm 25 years old and I'm a B2B marketer at Prince Sneakers. I'm in the B2B team for a little over 1 year now. Always had a background in outbound marketing and in particular cold outreach and LinkedIn outreach. So I think those will be the main two topics we'll be discussing in this episode. Always had experience with agencies, also did a lot of freelance work also regarding outreach. So I saw a great fit with Prince Sneakers, and been loving it ever since.
Yeah, so today it's all about outbound marketing, outbound campaigning. So can you explain a little bit to the listeners, what does it mean?
Yeah, outbound marketing can sometimes get confused with inbound marketing, where inbound is mostly focused on customers currently searching for a solution, for example. And as a company, you can capture that those searches by, let's say, Google Ads on specific keywords or SEO, blogging, and also on specific keywords. However, outbound is a bit different than that. Outbound is where you take a lot more control yourself. You, as a company, reach out to potential customers yourself. So instead of waiting for them to come to you, you're reaching out to them. And in B2B, that can be done on a lot of different platforms. Of course, you can do LinkedIn ads, for example, or a lot of different ways. But how I and B2B utilize outbound the most is by cold emailing, which is where you basically email prospects with your product offer, for example, or a softer call to action or softer conversion, maybe inviting them to a webinar. But you never had contact with these people directly before. So you ideally want the first contact to be as warm as possible, or at least to feel as warm as possible. Because, as you can imagine, you're emailing someone for the first time and they're like, who is this guy? So the beauty of cold outreach is in making that potential first contact feel as warm as possible. And the way how we do that is what we'll be discussing in this episode, and how you can do it yourself, basically.
Well, that's interesting. And I believe also when it comes to inbound, a lot of companies dream about inbound, having the clients come in, just wait for these leads to fill in the forms on the website, etc. But the reality is still a lot of companies need to go out there and find the business. And there's only a certain percentage of the people that are actually actively looking for something that you're offering right now. It's not like what you see in B2C, that the products you're offering is more like an impulse or has a huge audience, which could potentially be, but there is also a group that is not actively looking. So you have to take into account that that's what you're saying, I think, how you approach them, deliver value, and make sure that you're offering something that's always to their benefit, whatever time you contact them and whatever channel you're using. So let's dive into that a little bit more. So we want to go out there. We want to look at our audience, offer them value, and ideally at some point offer our product. Where do we start?
So first, I'd like to start by finding your target audience. Next, you want to engage with the target audience. And the next step would be to close the deals, for example. And the final step would be to learn from everything you've done before and how are you going to do it next time. So if we were to start with outbound, I'd say create a great target list. And that has become significantly easier over the past few years. There's a bunch of different toolings where you can give your criteria for your ICP, for example, or a specific niche that you want to target. And you can put in these criteria and you'll get a real-time overview of, hey, there's so many decision makers within the DMU I want to target. And that way you can create your first target list. And then it's just building on from there. But getting a great target list can be quite of a challenge itself. Because how do you even know when your target list is complete? Sometimes it feels like an endlessly large amount of companies or a large amount of prospects. You never truly know when it's correct. Let's give an example for Sprints and Sneakers. Let's say we want to target B Corp agencies or B Corp companies. How do we truly know have all of them in a list? It's not like the tooling you're using is saying, oh, you're done now. So it's really you have to get a bit of the look and the feel of how to create a list and then build on from there.
Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more, I think you're talking about ICP, which is the ideal customer profile. Yeah. It's from the scaling up methodology that we use. The DMU is for decision making unit. Just to explain it a little bit in advance, and I love what you're saying. So you build a target list. I know we've been using tools like Clay.com, where we not only create lists where it's based on, hey, this is the CEO, this is the company, but also other variables where, for example, hey, they got an investment of more than $1 million in the last 6 months. Yeah. These are the recent LinkedIn posts they did. More details about the decision making, like you're explaining, and what technology are they using. So you can really make a very advanced database, and the more advanced it is, the more opportunity we have to personalize our outreach, to better understand their challenges. For example, in our example, you were talking about B Corps. We also have a lot of e-com shops as our clients. Yeah. If they're still using MailChimp, we know there are some limitations. We know that they're using MailChimp. We know in combination, for example, if we see that they're using Shopify, we can easily get them from MailChimp to Klaviyo and get them to grow faster. And these, I think, really interesting metrics that not everybody is aware of, which they should include in their hit list.
Absolutely.
Use that to their benefit, I think, to better understand the target audience. And we also used to talk about buyer personas a lot. Is that still something that we use in creating this hit list, target list? We're talking about ICP, DMU. Is the buyer persona still in there in that strategy, or?
Yeah, I think the impact that the buyer persona has on the campaign in general is kind of becoming less and less. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. I remember the times when you want to do a campaign, you sit next to your client and you create a buyer persona. And after you've done it a few times, you notice that some information is missing. And that's usually the direct input from your buyers. It's all hearing it from your client, for example. It's not necessarily the truth. And it's really hard to challenge that as when you're working at an agency, because you also don't know the truth, because it's a new project. So that's why it's really important to ask the right questions to your client, for example, or at least if you're doing a campaign yourself, maybe ask within your team, like, hey, what truly are the pain points or the benefits of our product or service to the target audience? So to answer your question, I wouldn't say the buyer persona is a necessity anymore, but more the deep knowledge and really doing the research itself. I think that's where the true value is. So having a persona in a PowerPoint sheet slide that just gets made and then kind of disappears in the background, and you kind of forget that you made it once, and that's maybe a bit outdated. So fortunately, like you said, we have toolings where we can enrich a lot of data. That's also a great way of finding and learning more about your target audience. And I think the example you mentioned about LinkedIn posting, for example, to give a little bit more context, let's say you have a huge list with LinkedIn profiles of your prospects, and you want to enrich it with some data about their recent LinkedIn posts. And then you ask, for example, a ChatGPT to, hey, can you in a few sentences describe what their recent LinkedIn posts were about? And that's a great way of learning of what are your prospects talking about, and what are their pain points, and what's on their mind. And that's the great thing about that this is possible, is that you can do it at scale. And that's just such an incredible force that wasn't really available 2 to 3 years ago, and now it's basically at our fingertips. So
and I love what you're saying. I used to say in terms of e-com, there's a lot of valuable insights in reviews and customer support questions and all that areas. And I think what you're saying is LinkedIn is kind of like a similar source of what is on their mind. And I believe what you've also been doing in your team as doing buyer interviews, because what you're saying is that the company, the business leaders within a certain company not always know the truth about why people are buying. I remember one of our partners saying, we're the friendliest company, but doesn't really sound like a unique buying reason why people buy. And I think in addition to actually interview these buyers, I also believe there's a lot of data available to support your thoughts on who's the buyer persona, who's your ICP, because doing a database or who are actually the people that buy your product right now, what position are they in, what company are they in, what are the deals. So having a little bit more data that rather than doing a brainstorm session or like a buyer persona session where you based on gut feeling say like, hey, these are our clients, I think is so that's an example of how you use the LinkedIn data to enrich your hit list. Is there more we should be aware of how to use data in your outbound campaign?
One thing I see a lot happening, unfortunately, is that the data from LinkedIn kind of gets seen as this one source of truth. People don't really look further than the data that's available on LinkedIn about their prospects. So I usually come with an alternative. I think this data is really nice. It's generic stuff such as someone's first name, someone's last name, company name, maybe work experience, whatever. But it doesn't really give you a great hook to use in your campaign. Instead of, hi, first name, I see you work at this company. It's super lame. It's not. You only have a few seconds to catch someone's attention in outreach. So that shouldn't be the way you want to do it.
There's also no value in it. Right?
No, it's not. It's not.
It's personalized, but
tell
no
me
value.
Something new. Tell me something I want to hear.
Yeah.
And that's not that you know my first name. Cool, but what's in it for me? But we'll get to that in a little bit. So what we do is, besides the basic data we get from LinkedIn, we do a lot of enrichments. And the way we do it is, for example, with a tooling called Clay, which I really recommend check out for a little bit. It might be a bit costly, but try a free trial or whatever. So what we do, we have the generic data and we add some more fields to it. See it kind of like a spreadsheet with the basic information from LinkedIn. And we're going to add a new column with, for example, hey, for all these 1,000 companies in this list, how are they ranking on Google? What is their SEO score? And this is all possible at scale. So within just a few clicks, you can basically get all this important data that you can use as a field in your outreach for all these 1,000 companies and just run it. Just run the function. So in a matter of minutes, you can just see, hey, this company ranks has this score, or this company has this score. So instead of opening with, hi, my name is Wesley and I work for Sprints and I'm reaching out, blah, blah, blah. You say, hey, I noticed this and this about your company. I think there's some improvements to be made. Do you recognize this? Maybe we should have a chat. That's in short, right? But in reality, it's a bit more complex, of course. But that's super nice because it can be a moment of for the prospect to recognize, hey, someone has really done their research. It doesn't feel bulky. It feels genuine. And that's just one of the examples you can do. And the beauty about it is we've just added one column to our spreadsheet. And we can do a lot more. So besides the SEO score, what could another indication be? So when's the last time an update has been done on the website? And then you run that. And so you add layer on layer on layer. And that's how you make the first contact feel super warm. And I just love seeing in my campaigns that prospects respond with, hey, thank you so much for this email. I appreciate you really taking the time to do your research, even though we might not be interested right now, which happens a lot of the time, because we're really focusing on the 5% of your target audience that is ready to buy. But those 95%, if the responses are positive, you can just add them on LinkedIn And then another process starts, and then they get targeted maybe with ads, and you post stuff to your own LinkedIn, and you keep them warm that way. So it's just really nice getting that direct feedback from your prospects, that they appreciate the effort you put in, and that you're really hitting their pain points. And that's such a nice thing to see, and it gives me a lot of confidence in my work, seeing the pain points we envisioned, and getting the direct feedback from our prospects that we are indeed hitting the right notes and booking the meetings based on that.
Yeah, so I think what you're saying is try to understand the business situation as good as possible, and the challenges that they might have of the current phase that they're in. But I also think that understand the person that you want to help as good as possible, right? We often talk about, hey, we our contact person, we need to make him or her successful, and to better understand what role they're in and the challenges that they face, and the stuff they're talking about on LinkedIn, or the replies that they do, or the better we are capable of helping that person in their role, and providing a lot of value. Because I love the example of the SEO, and the more value we can drive at more moments, the higher the chances that they will return back, and at some point going to buy the service that we're offering, which is in line with the value that we've created already. So we got this hit list. It is enriched. We know a lot about our ICPs. We understand their business. We understand the contact person, the DMU, and what the challenges are. Well, I've once came up with the model. It's the AAA value model, where I believe we should dive into the ICP and their heads, and come up with a strategy how we can create as much value as possible.
Yeah.
Right. Because we need a lot of touch points nowadays to get someone to buy. It used to be like 7 touch points in the marketing books that I used to read, but that's already a long time ago. Well, Google did a research. It's about 27 touch points, and it's although some think it's very linear, I think it's quite messy how the process goes, the buyer journey. But I truly believe that whatever the touch point is, we should always drive value, right? It should never be, hey, this is what we're offering you right now. And I know we've been talking about it, saying like you cannot walk up to a girl in a bar and say like, hey, I'm gonna bring you home tonight. You need to play a game a little bit, and warm them up, and offer them interesting things, and having a chat. So also before someone is ready to buy, you should offer a lot of value all the time. And then at some point, you can talk about the product offering or the service offering that you do. So I think coming up with a really proper strategy how to drive value to that audience will be the next step. Do you like this episode? Like and subscribe, because there's more to come. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the example you mentioned about directly asking someone to go home with you, that spot on. And this is a conversation I've had before with Daan Smit from Storybrand, the Netherlands. And he said, yeah, you don't ask someone directly to marry with you. You ask them on a date.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's go on this adventure together and provide value and learn from each other. And so it's much less about direct selling, because that's just not going to work. You need the 27 touch points you mentioned. So yeah, spread it out over multiple channels. For example, you can run ads on the meantime, because we have this list. And let's not forget the crazy value that this highly personalized list has, that you made yourself. And up until very recently, you would have to buy this data from a data broker, and you only get like this service level information. And that was the way to go. People didn't know any better. And now you can create your own version of this. So I can imagine the data brokers that currently still sell these types of lists are probably with their hands in their hair like, yeah, this is not sustainable anymore, because it's so easy to do yourself nowadays. So yeah, provide value. So besides this being part or Outbound being part of a larger flow in general, I want to focus on value in my copy. And the way we do that is by focusing on what's in it for me. And that's what I ask, that's what I want my prospect to think when he opens or sees my email. What's in it for me? So no talking about myself constantly, not only, hey, I, it's me. But we want to turn that around. I'm going to say my client or the prospect who's reading the email, he's the hero of the entire campaign, basically. So what you want to do in your copy, use the data we've collected to our advantage, put this into your copy, put the prospect in the spotlight, capture his attention within the first 3 seconds, otherwise you've lost this person. So create a great hook to begin with. So maybe just a super blunt statement of, hey, your SEO score is this. That makes me read. I'm curious. Okay, tell me more, because you don't have to be a mathematician to realize that might not be the greatest score to have. And then you build from there. So you have your hook, maybe a little bit about yourself. Why are you even emailing or contacting this prospect? And then you build from there. And the power of your copy lies within the follow-ups as well. Unfortunately, a lot of companies that knock at our door at Princess Sneakers, they have done some outbound themselves. They've set up a campaign before, LinkedIn messaging maybe, and they often come to the conclusion that it's not working for them. And then you take the campaign, you look at it, you dissect it a little bit, and you add or you challenge it on the success factors that we use at Princess Sneakers. And what I do is I mostly highlight with several colors from, hey, this is about you and this is not about the prospect. Hey, this is not really providing any value. Hey, this is just the personalization that you're using is just first name and company name. What are we communicating here? Is this the way to go? And when you're looking at a campaign like that, you see a lot of improvements that can be made for the campaign that we will be doing. So looking at copy, put your prospect in the spotlight. I think that's the main tip I can give, and use AI to your advantage here. For example, you could try AI writing within your campaign as well, because we mentioned we have a lot of custom fields. How can you utilize this? You can maybe ask ChatGPT, hey, can you just write for each of these 1,000 people a custom intro? And that works pretty well, but it's a bit technical, right? So there's one thing you should take away from your copy is focus on what's in it for me, and not for yourself, but for your prospect. And
so the me is the prospect.
The me is the prospect, clear, indeed. And write for one person. If you're trying to send, or if you're trying to write an email for 1,000 people at once, you're not gonna hit the right spots. Try to think of the person you're mailing just as one person. Write it that way. Have maybe a copywriter look at it. Have someone else look at it. Because the challenge within writing great copy is that you need to understand exactly the value of your company for the prospect. You have to understand what the prospect is doing, what their pain points are, what their gains are when it comes to your product or offering. And you have to put it in that kind of language that it doesn't read like super difficult or fancy words, or that's like a big no-go. So the huge challenge in writing great copy is that put it in simple words, try to keep it as short as possible, and make sure you capture the attention within 3 seconds. So you need some real deep understanding of both your own service and the customer service.
Yeah, so I think what you're also saying is we're going from one-to-many to one-to-one and driving as much value as possible. And I also know that within your team, at some key accounts, like the top 20, top 50 accounts, we even do manual personalized work because it's still more effective than some of the AI work that we do. So there's find the balance between getting more out of the outreach that you do, or do it more on scale automatically with a lot of data that you use. And I also know that you've been talking what an outbound campaign can never exist only about email, and I know you love to build funnels. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what a typical outbound funnel looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing we see in B2B is that the landscape, the channels the buyers are focusing on, the channels that they're using, is becoming more and more by the day, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? They're not just only using LinkedIn, they're not only using email anymore. They're going to events. But just because there are so many places to contact your potential buyer, I think that gives a lot of opportunity to get your message out there and get the right content to the right person at the right place.
At the right time.
At the right time, indeed. Thank you. And the content that you have, that you can switch it up a little bit. Not the same messaging for every channel, but maybe a bit of content focus on specific pain points, then some success cases, client testimonials on multiple channels. So the opportunity you have there to build an amazing full funnel approach with a lot of different touch points on a lot of different channels are incredible. So ideally, even though LinkedIn and email are amazing channels, which are the foundation of my Outbound campaign, I focus on LinkedIn ads, for example, maybe even cold calling I add within my flow, and maybe Google ads. And this really depends on the target list you've built as well, right? Because at Sprints, I have projects that have certain total addressable markets of thousands and thousands of accounts. And then you can pick different channels, of course. But I also have projects where my total addressable market is 50 to 70 accounts. And that completely changes the game, and it changes how you deal with your budget and how many time you can spend on one prospect. So, yeah, that's the hard part is that the choices sometimes infinite nowadays in B2B, but that's also the beauty of it, and finding out where your prospect is. And sometimes it can be like a huge niche surrounding on Reddit, for example. It's super nice to figure that out with your client as well, and learning about your prospect along the way.
Yeah, and I believe to add is that I think TikTok is still in the phase where Facebook was like 10, 12 years ago, where everybody said like that's not for B2B. Well, we're using Meta all the time to warm up audiences, to show them already, to get them already familiar with something that a partner is offering. And then I also love what you're saying, including cold calling, for example, which is ideally not that cold anymore if we contact them. And also believe that we can include a letter by mail in our flows. So hey, we make them aware. We send an email, send our LinkedIn. We get them in our database. We're offering more value via email, or maybe automatically send a WhatsApp message. So I think WhatsApp now introduced WhatsApp channels. I think in general we can learn a lot from B2C brands and leverage that a little bit more in the B2B space. So looking at other ways how to contact your ICP in a more effective way is worth looking into, and include that at the right time, at the right moment. Automatically sending a WhatsApp message after you send a proposal, for example, is something that is worth trying, because it's a very effective channel, which is directly into your phone and has like a 98% open rate. So
the role of sales in this entire process is crucial. And for as long as I can remember, and this is how I've been taught in school and everything, is that marketing and sales have always been a bit like ice and fire. And marketing always blames sales, right, for not closing the meetings, and sales blames marketing for not providing qualitative leads.
yeah.
That's always been the case. But with a great outbound campaign, we've really shifted the traditional relationship of sales and marketing being separate entities to them really becoming together and working really closely knit on this campaign and holding each other accountable for the success of the campaigns. And that's one thing from my earliest campaigns as Prince of Sneakers that I didn't realize or didn't know yet and didn't utilize yet. I didn't tell sales properly, hey, you can expect an amount of conversations from this campaign, both on LinkedIn, both on email, and maybe you should pick up the phone sometimes if someone replies, instead of always responding just by typing. There's a lot of power of picking up the phone, and you do a lot of sales yourself. How much power is there in just picking up the phone and saying, hey, I saw your email and I just decided to give you a quick call because this and this and that. there's so much power in that. But if you don't communicate it properly to your sales representative, you're losing out on a lot. And I think there's a direct relationship between my best performing campaigns and the performance and the buy-in from the sales representative. So let's not forget about the effect sales has on this entire campaign, and that you're really doing it together, and that's the fun part of it. So sales is doing more marketing, and the marketing is doing more sales. So that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wrote a chapter in the book AI in Sales from Tony from the social selling company, and this is exactly what I was talking about as well. I think the role of sales is changing. It's not always meetings anymore because there's only a limited of time that buyers spend with actually a sales rep. So being out there on LinkedIn, look at Stein, for example, our colleague. He's really out there all the time. I try to do that, and it's not really that easy to measure, but for sure it's contributing to all the sales results. So I love what you're saying, that sales should do a little bit more marketing, and marketeers are a little bit more responsible for sales. It's not that linear that marketing hands over the leads to sales anymore. They should really collaborate. It's a great insight. So I imagine that while the campaign is running, you need to know what is effective in your campaign, but also at some point sales comes in. So what is the next step?
Yeah, the next step would be to make sure sales is enabled to get to do the meetings, to get to close the meetings. And that is partially dependent on the tooling you use, where you can keep track of the performance of the campaign and look at specific metrics such as, hey, how many of my emails are getting a reply, how many are getting opened. But that's still a bit service level. What you really need is buy-in from sales and making sure they know what to expect and they reserve time to do the follow-ups on the campaign, because you're reaching out to prospects at scale. So just imagine 5 interested prospects per day from your ICP responding to your emails or messaging you on LinkedIn. That's can be quite time consuming, and some directly will call your sales manager or whoever. So if those expectations are not properly set with the sales representative, your campaign is probably gonna fail. That's a learning I've had in the past, not involving sales enough in the process. So my best advice would be really set expectations with sales. Hey, this and this is our hypothesis. This is what you can expect. Please reserve this and this and this amount of time every day or every week. And that will directly increase the performance of your campaign. And the next step would be to, whenever the campaign is finished, for example, make sure to learn from what you've done, plan a meeting with sales, look at some of their replies, what conversation went well, what did you learn, and to make sure to do, create an even better campaign next time. Really use the data and the dashboards you have to your advantage, and maybe even join a few sales meetings, which can also be a great learning for yourself. When is the last time? Maybe when's the last time I visited a meeting from sales, even though I'm super involved with everything that happens before and up to the meeting. So you learn so much from that, and a lot more from just sitting with a sales meeting for 30 minutes than a ChatGPT output can give you. So talking about ChatGPT a little bit, I think everyone knows by now what it is. I think most Americans don't use it on a daily basis, which blew my mind. We're living in such a bubble, it seems like. But also coming back to your persona question, the direct insights from your buyers, I think extremely valuable, more valuable than any ChatGPT output can be, more valuable than any persona can be. So,
and I like what you're saying about having sales involved in this process. They should be more out there and not only wait for a lead to have the right score and then they follow up. They should be proactively involved in this campaign. And I also know that you're monitoring your campaigns on a tactical level, so the ads and the emails, but also on a somewhat higher level to look at, okay, how much pipeline is this creating? How many opportunities are there actually coming from this whole campaign, because it's a combination of all these channels, but also taking into account the sales cycle, right? So are you building an outbound campaign for the upcoming 3 weeks while you're having a sales cycle of 6 months? I know you've been taking that into account, which is, I think, valuable to share, because if you got a sales cycle of 6 to 9 months, please take that into account, right? So you always have your always on hygiene content from your brand, your story that you're offering. And then meanwhile, like you said, your outbound campaign is part of a bigger strategy, right? So there's more than only the outbound campaign, because there's also, like I said, your brand awareness, the events that are part of it. So I think that's interesting to share. You were talking about AI a little bit. Can you give like a short vision on how you think what role AI is going to play in outbound campaigns?
Yeah, what we're currently already seeing is that just the speed of setting up an outbound campaign has increased significantly. I remember sometimes when doing research, you'd have to do it on Google manually, and you have to collect sources and combine everything yourself. And now we have ChatGPT, which suddenly was there, right? A year ago, it kind of started to come up. Now you can just write creative prompts, and we have plugins for ChatGPT for specific for outreach, where there's like this huge library behind it of success factors for outreach and how you write great copy, and you can just put in, hey, I want a campaign for this and this and this and this. And you can, as an output, you can get a lot of copy, for example, or some insights on specific companies. Because ChatGPT can do research, right? It searches through Bing. So I can say, hey, research sprints and tell me their top 3 core values, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it just gives the output. So that's incredible. But it still will require some manual work to use it, to turn it into actionable insights for your campaign. Just the amount of time you can save using ChatGPT is incredible. So I sometimes do these short outbound campaigns for clients, which lasts about 6 weeks with just a few hours every week. And then we go through the entire process from our first handshake between me and the client till, thanks guys, I'll do the analysis in a bit, and till next, we'll see you in the next campaign. So just the speed and velocity of everything has increased significantly.
Nice.
And it's just that you shouldn't be completely reliant on AI to create or enrich your campaign, but it's such a great tool. And I think it's kind of funny that if AI is used in writing for your email, for example, like I said, the custom hook you can write with ChatGPT. But maybe the response from the buyer can also be AI generated. So it's super weird, right? Everyone has these plugins nowadays. So who's really talking to who? Or is it just ChatGPT talking to ChatGPT? So we could have a whole different discussion and whole different podcast about what that's going to look like. Are people even going to sell to people?
Maybe we should have like a watermark, or this is a human written or something.
Yeah, I would love the transparency. Yeah. So...
Can you share a success story, successful experiments that you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me think. A while ago, I did an outbound campaign for an app building agency, an app development agency. And like many of our clients, they get used to get all their clients from inbound. And they were like, hey, maybe Sprints Sneakers can help us exploring some new opportunities, because we're kind of stuck in this inbound way of working, but we get the same results every month. So maybe there's more to it. So what we looked at it, we set up a few experiments, and one of the experiments was setting up an outbound campaign focused on Dutch apps that fall within their target audience within the Netherlands, but that currently have a terrible scoring in the App Store. So instead of reaching out, what a lot of companies do, unfortunately, is just, okay, let's just email all Dutch apps and just say, hey, do you want app development? That's not going to work. And you really don't want to do that. It's kind of spammy. But when we scraped the app scores, we got, hey, these 100 apps are kind of scoring pretty bad, and they're within our target audience. So maybe we can do an outreach as an experiment to these exact companies. This was one of my first big experiments at Sprints Sneakers, and one of my most successful ones, at least early in my career at Sprints Sneakers. And what made it work is that it was super relevant for the target audience. So the prospects that received our messages, which was also part of a bigger campaign, right? So we did multi-channel advertising, but when they received our email, we got incredible amount of positive replies and like, hey, this is actually such a blocker for us right now. Our current app score, yeah, I'd love to have a discussion. So in that way, an outbound campaign can become super exciting because on the one hand, the timing was incredible because it's currently a pain point they're suffering from. And it's personalized. And that just really worked well together. But the only one thing I would do better this time when it comes to that campaign is that it was such a momentary capture. It was at this exact day their app score. So it was kind of a coincidence sometimes. Like, oh yeah, we're currently looking for a new partner to help us with this problem. But let's say an app now has a bad score. Yeah, they wouldn't know it. It's because it was such a moment's capture. So if I would do it again, I'd make a data set within a tooling such as Clay, what we discussed. And then I just have my real-time overview. So whenever this trigger event happens, specific apps gets a specific score, or it goes from a 4 to a 3-star in the store within the past 3 months, for example. That's such a valuable trigger, and then you can be the first to act on it. So
yeah, and I love that you're actually saying that your database, your hit list is not static, but it's actually updating all the time, real time maybe even. And if there are some changes, like if they're posting something new on their website or posting on LinkedIn, you'll be aware of it, and it has a certain topic, and you can directly use that insight to act on it, and maybe find out what the moment is that you should contact them and get in touch.
Yeah.
And so it's thanks so much for sharing. So the podcast is called Redefine Growth, and today we've been talking about outbound campaigns, which obviously most of the times have the goal of bringing in more business. But we also should believe that it should be more about making a positive impact on the world or the people. Can you explain what redefining growth means for you as a part of the Sprints and Sneakers team?
Yeah, for me, redefining growth, I think it's more focused on the people part. We talk a lot about people, planet, profit, and just growing up and being in school and being in and studying. I've always had this bit of, how do you call it? Not really looking forward to work for 50 years, so to say. Just you've seen the TV shows where people are just overworked and their boss is terrible to them and they have a toxic manager. And I was like, how am I gonna survive in this world? Like, how am I gonna do this? So one thing I really noticed at Sprints and Sneakers, that's just the amount of personal attention and the eye for your well-being and where you want to go in life and your personal life and your career. Just the amount of attention that get put in that is, it's incredible. That's kind of all my doubts that I just mentioned before were kind of like, oh, wow, this is also how companies can do it. So that gives me a lot of motivation to really work on my personal goals and communicate my personal goals with my team lead. And that's that's once every quarter. And that we call in Dutch the groeipad. It basically means growth path, where you really map out, hey, this is where I want to go this year and this quarter, but maybe even in 5 years. And nothing is too crazy to discuss there. If you want to do podcasts every week, for example, then your team lead will help you figure out, okay, but how can we make this measurable? And what can I do? And what can Sprints and Sneakers do to make that work for you? So redefining growth for me is really becoming the best version of yourself, and also having your company or your employer, or whatever you want to call it, have them be an accelerator for your own goals.
Well, it's great to hear that the investment in the personal growth of the team and the quality of life that we try to measure and is worth doing, and you experience it like that. And we truly believe that the higher the quality of life, the better the performance of the business will be, and obviously also the quality of life of the team. And I also think what is worth mentioning is that besides the quality of life of our team, we also contribute a lot to the neighborhood and making Christmas presents for the lonely elderly, and working together with companies locally and helping them out. Just as like the Growth for Good projects that we do for companies that we believe deserve it and don't even have to pay for it. So and I think I'm glad to hear that you get a lot out of it, because it's a very important factor why I started Sprints and Sneakers as well. So thank you so much for I'll take it as a compliment. Thanks for having you on the pod. It's been interesting to talk about outbound campaigns, creating hit lists, enriching the data, setting up campaigns, omni-channel, providing a lot of value via a lot of different channels on different moments at different times, and then include sales, measure what you're doing on a tactical and strategic level, and then make this part of your company strategy, which includes other topics as your brand strategy, etc. So super interested to hear your thoughts on it. I hope you enjoyed it. Normally you get a Sprints and Sneakers sweater, but you already got one. So we come up with something else that I will provide you with. So,
yeah, I'm curious. No, thanks, Bart, so much for having me. I think it's a privilege to sit here, and maybe we'll do it again sometimes. So many topics that we still can discuss on, and yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching this episode of Redefine Growth. We're redefining the way growth is done. So growth business strategies, but also making a positive impact on the people and planet, which should be included in every strategy. I hope you liked this episode. There's more to come, so please like and subscribe.